That night, the old shelter manager flipped my file, his blue-gray eyes stopping on my last name, Whitfield. He looked up, voice low and cold. "Do you know why you're really here?" I was a Northline Dynamics analyst, assigned mandatory community service after an internal setup. 5 minutes later, he said his real name, and I understood. The shelter, my firm, and my family. They all belong to him. My name is Kara Whitfield. I'm 28 years old, and my professional life ended at 9:04 a.m. on a Tuesday. It ended in a windowless HR conference room on the 30th floor. A room painted a shade of beige so offensive it felt like a personal insult. The room smelled of industrial carpet cleaner and stale fear. "Kara," said Cynthia Davies, our senior HR business partner. "Following the internal audit of the Aurora project data integrity, we found significant process violations." She didn't look at me. She read from a script. Her voice was modulated, practiced in delivering bad news with a veneer of corporate empathy that was thinner than the ice on a Westover pond in November. "Given your tenure," she continued, "Northline Dynamics is prepared to offer an alternative to termination." I sat perfectly still. My blood felt like it had been replaced with sludge. Termination, violations. I saw the ghost of my career, a 6-figure salary, and a 47th floor office with a view of the entire city, evaporate under the buzzing fluorescent lights. "The alternative," Cynthia said, sliding a folder across the polished veneer table, "is a mandatory, unpaid leave of absence, coupled with 120 hours of community service. This will be framed as a sabbatical, a chance to reboot." A reboot? I wasn't a computer. I was the scapegoat. "What violation?" My voice came out cracked, betraying the cold fury I was trying to cage in my chest. "Data was manually altered, bypassing QA protocols, originating from your workstation. It compromised the integrity of the Aurora findings." "That's impossible." "The logs are clear. Kara?" "Logs, yes. I was sure they were." My boss, Mason Kitt, was a predator in bespoke suits. Project Aurora was my algorithm, a new risk analysis platform for our banking clients. It was designed to spot microfractures in emerging markets. It was working too well. It was flagging risk in a portfolio Mason had personally guaranteed to the board was rock solid. I remembered the 3 a.m. email I'd sent him 2 weeks ago. "Mason, the model is flagging significant volatility in the Aurora test bed. The numbers you're prepping for the board look optimistic. We need to show them the real data." His reply, sent at 7 a.m., was breezy. "Great catch. Team player? Love that diligence. I'll handle the QA side and clean up the noise before the presentation. You focus on V2.0. Clean up the noise. He had used my credentials. He had bypassed my protocols, cooked the books to make Aurora look like a miracle product. And when the internal auditors, who only ever catch the small fish, got close, he pointed the finger straight at me. I was the disgruntled analyst, the process violator. He got his bonus. I got 120 hours of humiliation. "Where?" I asked, my voice flat. Cynthia gave me a small plastic smile. "We believe in synergistic solutions. Northline Dynamics is the primary benefactor of the Northline Cares Foundation. We've arranged your service at one of our flagship partners, Alderhouse." The ultimate irony, a corporate-funded homeless shelter, they weren't just firing me, they were putting me in a company-branded penalty box. "Sign here, Kara, and here." The non-disclosure agreement was thick. It essentially forbade me from existing publicly, from mentioning Northline, Project Aurora, or my sabbatical to anyone, ever. I signed. The ink was black and final. Northline Dynamics is a fortress of glass and brushed steel in downtown Westover. It's the kind of building that reflects the sky so perfectly, it looks like it isn't there at all. Just a seamless, arrogant piece of the horizon. We specialized in risk. We sold certainty to billionaires and banks. We turned global panic into predictable, profitable data streams. My job was to find the single point of failure. I just never thought it would be me. That evening, I traded my leather satchel for a worn-out backpack and took the 45-minute bus ride to the industrial part of town, a place the executives on the 47th floor only saw from the air. Alder House was a low-slung brick building, probably a defunct municipal office from the 1970s. The Northline Cares logo was on a small, peeling sign by the door, looking embarrassed to be there. The air here didn't smell of conditioned air and artisanal coffee. It smelled of bleach, damp concrete, and the lingering, sweet-sour scent of unwashed bodies and boiled vegetables. The lobby was a small, scuffed room. A man sat behind a battered metal desk, staring at a spreadsheet on an ancient desktop computer. He was older, maybe late 60s, with a shock of thick, silver-white hair. He wore a faded flannel shirt, and his face was a map of deep lines. "Can I help you?" His voice was low, with a gravelly edge. "I'm Kara Whitfield, from Northline, for the volunteer service." He didn't stand. He just looked at me. His eyes were the most arresting thing about him, a pale, blue-gray, and they didn't just look at you. They seemed to be performing a full diagnostic. He saw my expensive coat, my watch, my raw anger. "Mr. Alder," he said, gesturing to a name badge on his shirt. It was the only new-looking thing on him. "We were expecting you." He didn't ask why I was there. He didn't offer sympathy. He didn't give me the volunteer tour. "Mop and bucket are in the utility closet down the hall. Dining room needs to be cleaned before the 8 p.m. dinner service. Sign-in sheet is here. Don't be late." I stood there, stunned by the lack of ceremony. "Your hands look soft," he added, still not looking up from his screen. "You'll want these." He pushed a box of cheap, powdered latex gloves toward me. The humiliation was a physical thing, a hot flush that started in my chest and spread to my face. I was a senior data analyst. I reverse-engineered market crashes, and I was being told to mop a floor by a man who looked like he hadn't seen a dividend in his life. I grabbed the gloves and found the closet. The mop was heavy, the stringy gray head smelling of mildew. As I pushed dirty water across the linoleum, the reality of the next 120 hours, 3 weeks of my life, sank in. I heard the kitchen staff, 2 women in hairnets, whispering over the clatter of industrial pans. "Told you it was coming," one said. "Cut in half? Half? How are we supposed to—" Northline cut the grant, said we weren't hitting our rehousing KPIs. How are we supposed to hit KPIs when they cut the budget for the case managers? "It's just soup tonight. Again, watery soup. And bread. Thank God the bakery donation came through." My hands tightened on the mop handle. KPIs. That was Mason's favorite word. Key performance indicators. It was the language we used to justify everything. We had just KPI'd these people out of a real dinner. I pushed the bucket into a dark corner of the dining hall, my back already aching. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It felt obscene. A piece of high-tech glass in this place of last resorts. I checked it. A new email from Cynthia Davies, HR. Subject: Community Service Placement. Kara. Just a reminder as you begin your service, you are still an employee of Northline Dynamics. As such, you are bound by the company code of conduct and the NDA you signed. Any interaction with media, or any public statements, social media included, regarding Northline, its finances, or the operations of the Northline Cares Foundation is strictly prohibited. We are monitoring this. We trust you'll make the most of this growth opportunity. Cynthia. A gag order. They hadn't just framed me and banished me. They had put a digital leash around my neck. They cut the funds to this shelter. And they put the one person who knew how the company cooked its books inside the shelter, then warned her not to talk. The audacity was breathtaking. "Head down, Kara," I muttered to myself. "Just do the time. 120 hours and you're gone. You get your file cleared, you get a neutral reference, and you disappear. This isn't your problem." I tried to believe it. I tried to rebuild the cold, analytical wall around myself. Then the residents started filing in for dinner. Families, old men, people who looked younger than me. their faces hollowed out by stress. They were quiet, orderly, taking their plastic trays with the bowl of thin steaming soup and the single slice of white bread. My stomach churned. This wasn't a data point. This wasn't a projection on a screen. I watched a young mother settle her two small children at a table. The boy, maybe 6, looked at his bread, then at his mother, then quickly, furtively, slipped the slice into the pocket of his thin coat. He didn't eat it. He was saving it. For later. The fear of future hunger was already hard-coded into him. I felt suddenly, violently sick. This was the noise Mason Kit had cleaned up. This was the acceptable loss, the rounding error in his perfect report for the board. I leaned against the wall to steady myself, my hand pressing against the cool cinder block. My fingers brushed something. It was a cheap, plastic frame, the kind you buy at a dollar store. Inside, a piece of paper, printed on a standard office laserjet. It was a quote. "Every number is a person." I stared at it until the words blurred. It was our slogan. It was the motto of Northline Dynamics. It was etched in frosted glass in our 70-foot lobby. It was on all our corporate letterhead. Mason had ended his Aurora presentation with it. "Every number," he had beamed at the board, "is a person we have saved from risk." I stood there, surrounded by the smell of bleach and hunger, the sound of spoons scraping plastic bowls, and the buzzing of a dying fluorescent light. I looked at the stolen bread in a child's pocket and the corporate lie hanging on the wall. And for the first time since 9:04 a.m., the sludge in my veins didn't feel like shock. It felt like ice. The third night shift was the worst. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by a dull, aching exhaustion and the raw-skin smell of industrial disinfectant. My hands were already starting to crack from the bleach water. I had spent the last 4 hours in the basement sorting donations, moth-eaten sweaters, single shoes, expired cans of green beans. Each item felt like a tiny, physical representation of failure. I was finishing my assigned tasks, my movements automatic. Sweep the hall, wipe the tables, check the bathroom. The shelter was quiet. Most residents were in their bunks. The only sounds the creak of old bed springs and the low, rattling hum of the ancient heater failing to fight off the night's damp cold. It was 10:58 p.m. My shift ended at 11 o'clock. I walked to the front desk, ready to scrawl my initials on the sign-out sheet and begin the long bus ride back to my empty, overly expensive apartment. Mr. Alder was there, just as he always was, silhouetted against the green glow of his monitor. He wasn't looking at the screen. He was looking at a single sheet of paper on his desk. My volunteer placement form, the one Cynthia Davies had emailed him. 2 minutes early, Ms. Whitfield, he said, not looking up. Just signing out? His hand, calloused and marked with liver spots, rested on the page. His index finger tapped my last name. Whitfield. A proud name, in this city, anyway. I said nothing. Pride was a luxury I couldn't afford. Your father's name is Colby, isn't it? My blood didn't just go cold. It froze solid. It was a physical blow. A sudden vacuum in my chest. Colby, my father. The man who hadn't spoken to me since I took the Northline job. The man who had vanished into a new marriage and a new life on the other side of the country. A name I had compartmentalized so thoroughly. Hearing it here, in this room, felt like a violation. I don't know what you're talking about, I said. My voice was sharp, brittle. That's not in my file. No, he agreed, his voice a low rumble. It isn't. He looked down at the paper again, as if reading from it. Mother, Diane, deceased. He paused, and my breath hitched. Old address, 417 Ridge Lane. The room tilted. 417 Ridge Lane. The small blue house with the peeling paint. The house we lost after my mother got sick. The house that existed before my father became the man who would abandon his past. That information wasn't just not in my file. It wasn't on any file. It was buried in memory, in boxes of old photos I hadn't opened in a decade. My analytical mind, the part of me that Northline had paid 6 figures for, Scrambled for a foothold and found none. This was an information breach of the highest order, but it was personal. "Who are you?" I snapped, my corporate composure shattering. "Are you with HR? Is this part of their monitoring? What is this?" He finally looked up. The deep lines around his eyes softened, but his gaze remained just as intense. He almost smiled. It was a sad, tired expression that didn't belong on the face of a simple shelter manager. "I'm someone who lost a grandchild once," he said, softly. The answer was so strange, so outside the bounds of my reality, that it silenced me. It wasn't an answer, it was a deflection, but one so heavy with meaning I couldn't push past it. I felt suffocated by the bleach-scented air, by the ghosts he had just summoned. "I need some air," I managed, and turned, pushing through the heavy fire door that led to the back alley. The cold hit me. A fine, needle-like rain was slanting across the single yellow floodlight, turning the steam rising from the dumpsters into a sickly haze. I wrapped my thin coat around me, my hands still smelling of powdered gloves, and took a deep breath of the wet, garbage-tinged air. And I saw it. Parked in the darkest corner of the alley, where the light didn't reach, was a car. It wasn't a resident's beat-up sedan or a staff member's hatchback. It was a black Lincoln Navigator, the exact model Northline Dynamics used for its executive transport fleet, the kind of car that picked Mason Kidd up from the airport. It sat there, engine idling almost silently, its tinted windows like obsidian, slick with rain. My first thought was panic. They'd come for me. Cynthia Davies, corporate security. They weren't satisfied with my 120 hours. They were here to fire me properly, to serve me papers, to threaten me again. My heart hammered against my ribs. A trapped bird. The fire door opened behind me, spilling a rectangle of dim light into the alley. It was Mr. Alder. He didn't look at me. He just walked past me, his worn boots splashing in a puddle. He walked directly toward the black SUV. I held my breath, expecting him to be questioned, to be told to move along. The driver's door opened. A man in a dark, impeccably tailored suit emerged, holding a black umbrella. He looked utterly alien in this alley. He was built like a bodyguard, with an earpiece I could see glinting even in the dim light. He opened the umbrella and held it over Mr. Alder, and then he inclined his head. It wasn't a nod. It was a gesture of deep, profound deference, a bow. "Sir," the driver said. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the rain. "The car is warm. We should go." "Mr. Alder waved a hand, dismissing the umbrella. 5 minutes. Arthur, wait in the car." "Yes, sir." The driver, Arthur, disappeared back into the vehicle. I was frozen. My brain was a broken algorithm, trying to process two sets of conflicting data: the flannel-shirted, gruff shelter manager, and the "sir" from a man who probably earned more than I did. The two realities could not coexist. "Mr. Alder turned to me. The rain darkened his silver hair, plastering it to his head. He looked older and infinitely more powerful than he had behind the desk. "You are your mother's daughter," he said. It wasn't a question. "Stubborn, too smart for your own good, and you trust the wrong people." "I don't understand," I whispered, the words barely audible. He reached into the pocket of his flannel shirt, past the Mr. Alder name badge. He pulled out a small, worn leather wallet. From it, he extracted an old ID card, laminated and yellowed with age. He held it out to me. I took it. My fingers, numb with cold, fumbled with the plastic. The photo was of a younger man, face harder, jaw set, wearing a suit, but the eyes were the same. The name read, Gideon A. Vale. The name hit me like the question about my father, but deeper, from a place of childhood lore. Gideon A. Vale. I knew that name. It was on the marble plaque in the lobby of Northline headquarters, obscured by a potted plant. Founder, Northline Cares Foundation. But I knew it from somewhere else, too. My grandmother, Diane's mother. She would tell stories about her family, about the grandfather I'd never met. Gideon Vale built this city, she used to say, stirring soup in a kitchen that smelled of rosemary. He never forgot where he came from, even when his own son did. It was her maiden name. This old man was my great-uncle, my grandfather's brother, the patriarch of the other side of the family, the one the Whitfields never, ever mentioned. My head was spinning. You're Gideon Vale? I'm Mr. Alder, he corrected me, taking the card back and slipping it into his wallet. Here, I'm just the man who counts the blankets. But you're right, you don't understand. He looked past me, at the shelter. This place was meant to be a promise. Your mother, Diane, she understood that. She volunteered here, before Colby. He turned back, his gaze pinning me. The rain ran down his face, and he didn't blink. You were framed, Kara, but you already knew that. You just don't know why. He took a step back, toward the warm, waiting car. You're an analyst, so let's analyze, he said, his voice dropping to a cold, hard whisper. You were put here for a reason, not just to be punished, to be silenced. You got too close to the rot. He paused, one hand on the car door. I'm tired of watching my company, my legacy, get strip-mined by fools in expensive suits. You see the numbers here, the thin soup, the broken heater. You see the lie on the wall. What do you want me to do? I want you to do your job, he said. The one you were really hired for. He looked back at the shelter, then at me. Tomorrow, he said, the promise landing like a punch. We'll read a different file, Aurora's file. He got into the Navigator. The door closed with a heavy, soundproof thud. The black SUV pulled silently out of the alley and disappeared into the rain, leaving me alone with the dumpsters, the cold, and an impossible, terrifying truth. I didn't sleep. The image of the black SUV disappearing in the rain and the name Gideon A. Vale had overwritten my brain's operating system. I was no longer just a disgraced analyst serving time. I was something else, an asset, a weapon, and I had a target. Back in my apartment, with the 4 a.m. city glow filtering through my blinds, I opened my personal laptop. My Northline-issued machine was a brick, confiscated by HR, but my credentials. Cynthia Davies had said, mandatory unpaid leave. That meant suspension, not termination. My access wasn't deleted, just walled off. Or so they thought. Mason always thought he was the smartest person in the room. He never realized that the analysts under him, the ones he treated like furniture, built the very systems he used, and we built our own keys. I opened a secure VPN, rerouted my IP through 3 different continents, and accessed the Northline internal portal not through the front door, but through a diagnostic port I had built into the Data Lake's API, a backdoor designed for maintenance, not for revenge. My credentials worked. I was in. The portal was just as I'd left it, a clean, sterile, corporate blue interface. I navigated to the Project Aurora dashboard. It was a masterpiece of deception. A sea of green, digital ticker tapes screaming success. KPI met, 110%. Aurora, Phase 1, deployment, flawless. Client satisfaction, 98.7%. Mason's presentation to the board was still featured on the homepage. A 30-minute video of him using my work, my code, to promise a new era of predictive profitability. The dashboard showed Project Aurora was not only successful, it was generating savings, massive savings. Operational efficiencies identified, 4.5 I know, Q4. I looked at that number, $4.5 million. Then I looked at the clock. 5:30 a.m. Time to go to the shelter. When I arrived, the cold was different. It wasn't the damp chill of a November night. It was the sharp, biting, indoor cold of a system that has completely failed. The air didn't just smell like bleach, it smelled metallic. The main heater in the basement was dead. A red tag, flapping slightly in the draft from the door, was tied around its main valve. Unpaid. Service discontinued. The gas bill. I found Gideon, Mr. Alder, in the small cinder block office behind the front desk. He was on the phone, his voice low and dangerous. I don't care about the quarterly report, Councilman. I care about the fact that it is 41 degrees in my dormitory. Yes, I'll hold. He saw me and motioned me in, covering the receiver. They're routing me to billing, the 4th time this week. He hung up, the call clearly pointless. The donations, I said, getting straight to the point. Where are the logs? He pointed to a stack of printouts on the corner of the desk. Northline Cares handles all digital contributions. We only see the monthly summary. I picked up the top sheet. It was a simple Excel printout. Donations, Q4, last year. $120,000 donations, Q4, this year. $72,000. A 40% drop. How? I asked. The economy is fine. Northline is boasting record profits. They cut the matching program, Gideon said, his voice flat. And they rerouted the Donate Now button on the main corporate site. It goes to the Foundation General Fund now, not to us. We're being starved. I pulled out my own printout, the one I'd made at 5 a.m., the Aurora dashboard. According to this, Project Aurora optimized $4.5 million in efficiencies last quarter. Gideon looked at the glossy green-checked paper, then back at me. And we can't pay a $4,000 gas bill. He reached under his desk and pulled out a different kind of log. It wasn't a printout. It was a spiral-bound, black and red notebook, the kind accountants used before computers. He opened it. The pages were filled with neat, tight script. Northline Cares requires a weekly impact report, Gideon said, his finger tracing a line of ink. This is our data. He pointed to the official report column. Beds filled weekly, 525. This was the number we sent to corporate. 75 beds, 7 nights, full capacity. Then he pointed to the column next to it, the one in red ink. Actual turnaways, weekly, 140. Another line item, meals served, 2,100. Next to it, in red, actual meal deficit, individuals requesting seconds, denied, 480. They're not just numbers, Kara, he said, his voice rough. They're people we sent back into the cold. The discrepancy was staggering. The official report, the one that fed Mason's KPIs, painted a picture of a perfectly efficient system. The reality, this paper book, showed a system at its breaking point. Gideon leaned back, the old chair creaking. He looked around the small, cold office, at the peeling paint, the single flickering fluorescent tube. What do you smell, Kara? He asked. The question was so odd. I hesitated. I sniffed. The air was sharp. Bleach, I said, from the hallway, and rainwater. I think the window seal is broken. That's right, he said, nodding slowly. Bleach and rain. He tapped the glossy printout of Aurora's flawless deployment. I smell that, too, and I smell greenlit Excel cells. The smell of data that's been cooked so thoroughly. It stinks of a lie. He was right. That was the smell of my old life, the artificial, odorless scent of the 47th floor, where numbers were just numbers, and a 40% cut was just optimization. He's not just cutting the budget, I said, the pieces clicking into place. He's moving the money, the $4.5 million in savings. It has to be going somewhere. That night, I didn't sort sweaters. Gideon had me reorganizing the pantry, which was code for giving me a quiet corner with my laptop and a power outlet. He guarded the door. My access was still active. I dove into the finance servers. Project Aurora wasn't just a success. It was a slush fund. The savings weren't returned to the general foundation pool. They were diverted. I followed the transaction codes. A breadcrumb trail of digital theft. The $4.5 million was transferred to a sub-account I had never seen before. Project ND Exec Wing Refresh. I clicked it. My stomach dropped. Invoices, PO numbers, contracts, $280,000. Vendor, Milano Imports. Memo. Ergonomic seating. 47th floor. Mason's new Italian leather office chairs. 75,000. Vendor. Westover AV. Memo. Interactive wall display. Boardroom. $150,000. Vendor. Kit Consulting LLC. Memo. Strategic Optimization Services. My fingers went numb. Kit Consulting LLC. I toggled to a public browser. I ran a state business search for Kit Consulting LLC. My blood turned to ice. Date of incorporation. 6 months ago. The exact week Project Aurora was greenlit. Registered agent. Mason Kit. Address? A P.O. Box at a mail center in the suburbs. He wasn't just hiding the numbers. He was paying himself with the money he saved by turning off the heat at a homeless shelter. He was using a shell company, a felony, to launder Northline's own foundation money directly into his pocket, and he had used me, the analyst who built the Aurora algorithm, as the firewall to cover his tracks. If anyone got close, I would be the one who violated data integrity. It was perfect. I began to work. My hands, raw from the shelter's bleach, flew across the keyboard. This was my world. Data, evidence. I took screenshots. I downloaded the encrypted invoices. I cross-referenced the server logs with the shell company's incorporation date. I saved everything to a nested, encrypted drive. I started to record everything. I put my phone on voice memo and slipped it into my pocket when I walked the halls. I recorded the kitchen staff arguing over how to stretch 20 pounds of potatoes to feed 80 people. I recorded the click-click-click of the broken radiator in the children's wing. I went out to help with the late dinner service. The line was long. The soup was thinner than it had been 3 nights ago. A man near the end of the line, younger than me, maybe 29 or 30, was staring at his tray. He wore a faded blue Northline branded polo shirt under a threadbare jacket. It was from the 5K data dash we'd all been forced to run last summer. "Tough night," I said quietly, handing him a slice of bread. He looked up. His eyes were intelligent, but exhausted, hollowed out. He gave a short, bitter laugh. "You could say that." He nodded at my volunteer badge. "They got you too, huh?" "Something like that," I said. "I used to work there," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Data integrity, 3rd floor." "What happened?" "Restructuring," he said the word like a curse. "Project Aurora. My whole department was optimized. My job was automated by an algorithm." "My algorithm?" "Got the email 2 months ago," he continued, staring at the bread. "Cobra insurance ran out last week. My kid's asthmatic, needed a new inhaler, $200. Had to choose between that and the rent." He shrugged, a gesture of complete defeat. "So, here I am." He looked down at his feet. His shoes were worn through athletic sneakers, the fabric at the toe torn open, revealing his damp sock. I looked from his ruined shoes to the logo on his shirt, to the watery soup on his tray, and then I thought of the $150,000 invoice for strategic optimization, sitting in Mason Kit's personal bank account. Every number is a person. I went back to the pantry, my hands shaking not from cold, but from a fury so pure it was almost silent. I checked my phone. The red light was on. It had recorded everything. It was the 7th night. My 120 hours were almost halfway done. I had the data. I had downloaded the server logs, the invoices from Kit Consulting LLC, and the cross-transaction reports from the Exec Wing Refresh sub-account. It was all neatly partitioned on an encrypted USB drive that was currently tucked into my sock, a cold, hard piece of plastic against my ankle. The shelter was quiet. A new donation of blankets had come in, not from Northline, and for the first time all week, the dormitories felt almost warm. The gas was still off, but the sheer volume of wool and fleece had created a communal heat. My shift ended at 11 p.m. I had just finished wiping down the stainless steel counters in the kitchen when Gideon motioned to me from his office. "Ms. Whitfield, a moment." I walked in. The usual buzzing fluorescent light was off. The only illumination came from a small, battered desk lamp that cast a pool of yellow light on his desk. The rest of the room was in deep shadow. He wasn't sitting behind the desk. He was in the corner, by a small hot plate I had never seen him use. 2 chipped ceramic mugs sat next to it. He poured steaming water from a small kettle into one of the mugs, which held a single, pale-looking tea bag. He pushed it across the desk toward me. "It's just chamomile," he said. "Helps with the cold." I wrapped my cracked hands around the mug. It was scalding, and the warmth was a shock. I said nothing, just waited. My analyst's mind was on high alert. This was a change in pattern. Gideon didn't take a mug for himself. He sat in his old creaking chair, but he didn't lean back. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped. He looked impossibly tired. "My daughter," he said, his voice quiet, directed at the floor. "She used to bring her little one to visit me, every summer, before everything, before the money made everyone strangers." My breath caught, but I didn't move. I knew he meant my mother, Diane. She was a good woman, Diane. She was warm, like this tea. She didn't have a cold bone in her body. He looked up, and his blue-gray eyes, the ones that had pierced me that first night, were filmed with a moisture I had not seen before. "She married a man who was nothing but cold bones, my son. Colby, my father. My son. He and I had a disagreement, a long time ago, about foundations, about what a name means. He saw Whitfield as a brand. I saw it as a responsibility. When he met his new wife, the one after Diane, the terms of the split were cold, clinical. He wanted the business, the name, the prestige. He didn't want the baggage. He was talking about me. I was the baggage." "I lost track," he whispered, and the admission seemed to cost him something. "I let him have Northline. I let him build his glass tower, and I stepped away. I built this place. This was my foundation. An apology, maybe, to her, for letting her marry a man like him." He was looking at me, but he was seeing her, my mother. "She used to bring you," he said, his voice gaining a small, rough edge of a memory, "to the old farm, before I bought the place in the city, before Northline was anything but a name on a piece of paper." He leaned in, and the shadow fell away from his face. "Do you remember Grandpa Grant? At the wind farm?" The words hit me. It wasn't a data point. It was a physical sensation. A sudden, violent rush of lost sense memory. Grandpa Grant. A flash of a huge, open field. The smell of cut grass and ozone. The slow, rhythmic whoosh, whoosh, whoosh of the giant white turbines he was so proud of. A red and white checkered tablecloth, spread on the porch. The sharp, sweet smell of cinnamon, apple pie. A huge, calloused hand ruffling my hair. A deep laugh that shook the porch floor. A memory I hadn't accessed in 20 years. A memory from before my mother got sick. Before my father became a stranger. Before Whitfield meant a building I worked in. My hand was shaking. The tea sloshed over the rim of the mug, scalding my fingers. I barely felt it. "You," I whispered. My voice was gone. "You were Grandpa Grant?" He nodded, just a single, slow, tired nod. Then he did something that seemed to break the scene. He reached up to the flannel shirt, to the Mr. Alder name badge that had been pinned there for 7 days. He unclipped it. He dropped it onto the desk, and it landed with a cheap, plastic clack. Without the badge, he wasn't Mr. Alder anymore. The illusion was gone. "My name," he said, his voice clear and formal, "is Grant Whitfield. Gideon was my father. Vale was my mother's name. I used it for the foundation." He was Grant Whitfield. The Grant Whitfield. The reclusive billionaire. The man Forbes had declared missing in action a decade ago. The man who had founded Northline Dynamics and then, according to company legend, given it to his son, Colby, and vanished. He wasn't Gideon Vale, my great-uncle. He was my grandfather, my father's father. I stood up. The mug crashed to the floor. shattering. The pale tea spreading across the dirty linoleum. I was shaking. It wasn't just cold. It was rage. It was relief. It was 1,000 volts of adrenaline. "You," I said, my voice trembling. "You're him. You're him. You own all of it. Northline. This place. You let this happen?" I pointed to the door, toward the cold dormitory. "You let the heat get shut off? You let Mason Kit, you let my father, turn this entire company into a machine that feeds on people?" "Yes," he said. He didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice. He took the accusation like a physical blow and didn't move. "I did. I let it happen. Because I walked away. I built the machine. And then I gave the keys to a man who only knows how to build walls. I gave Northline to a man who thinks numbers are walls, not people." "Why?" I choked out. "Why are you here? Dressed like this? Playing shelter manager?" "Because you can't see the rot from the 47th floor. Kara," he said, his voice like gravel. "You can only see it from the basement. I came here to watch my legacy die, to watch the last good thing I built get starved to death by the monster I created." I stood there, vibrating with a confusion so profound it made me dizzy. Half of me wanted to scream at him for what he had let my father become, for what he had abandoned. The other half felt, for the first time in my life, like I wasn't an orphan, like there was one other person on the planet who saw the world through the same lens. "You knew I was here," I whispered. "That first night, you knew who I was." I knew a Whitfield was being sent to my shelter. I knew HR had flagged an analyst for process violations on the Aurora project. I knew Mason Kit was a thief. I didn't know it was you. He looked at the shattered mug on the floor. "Not until I saw your file. Not until I saw Diane's name. I haven't seen your face since you were small." He stood up, and for the first time, he seemed to shed the Mr. Alder persona completely. He was taller. His shoulders, even under the flannel, were straight. This was the man who built wind farms and glass towers. "I didn't save you. Kara," he said, his voice firm, cutting through my shock. "Cynthia Davies and Mason Kit. They saved you. They thought they were sending you to a corporate penalty box. They thought they were silencing you." He gave a short, bitter laugh. "They didn't know they were sending you to the one place in this city I still control. They didn't know they were sending the evidence directly to the judge." He looked at me, his gaze analytical, the same look I saw in my own mirror every morning. "You saved yourself," he said. "You got the data. I've been watching you. You did what I couldn't do. You got inside the machine. You found the shell company." I stared at him. "How did you—" "The network here is mine. It's not on Northline's grid. I saw your VPN traffic. Kit Consulting LLC, very clean, very damning." He walked to the desk. He didn't look at the broken mug. He looked at the desk lamp. "I let this happen," he repeated. "And I've spent the last 5 years trying to find a way to fix it without destroying the good that's left. I've been fighting my own board, my own son, through lawyers and proxy votes. It was a cold war." He tapped the desk. "And you, Kara, you just handed me the bomb." He reached into his pocket, not the wallet this time. He pulled out a single, pristine white card. It was a Northline Dynamic Security card, but it didn't have a photo. It had a simple, guarded embossed V on it. He slid it onto the desk, into the pool of yellow light. "Friday night," he said. "The annual Northline Cares Gala. It's on the 47th floor. Mason Kit is the keynote speaker. He'll be presenting the success of Project Aurora and celebrating the efficiencies he's created for the Foundation." I looked at the card. It was a key, a master key. "I can't go to that," I said. "I'm banned. I'm on leave. Security would have me in cuffs before I hit the elevator." "You won't be going as Kara Whitfield, suspended analyst," he said. "You'll be going as part of the volunteer logistics team. Your name is on the list. This card will get you past the checkpoints. It will get you anywhere you need to go." He looked at me, the full weight of his identity, of my identity, settling between us. I'm not asking you to do this for me, Kara, or for your mother's memory, or for this family, whatever is left of it. He gestured to the door. I'm asking you to do it for them, for the man in the torn shoes, for the people who are sleeping in the cold because Mason Kit wanted a new chair. He looked at the USB drive, which I hadn't realized I was touching, a small bump in my sock. I didn't save you, he said again, and I can't protect you in that building, but I will open the door. It's up to you to knock it down. The next 48 hours were a blur of cold, calculated preparation. I didn't go back to the shelter to mop floors. My 120 hours of penance were irrelevant. I was in my apartment, living on black coffee and adrenaline, transforming a decade of analytical skill into a weapon. The USB drive was my primary focus. It wasn't just a collection of files. It was a narrative, a story told in hard data. I didn't just dump the files. I built an interface, a simple, clean, sterile presentation that mirrored Northline's own branding. Slide 1. Project Aurora KPI dashboard. Official. A screen of celebratory green. Slide 2. Alderhouse logbook. Actual versus. Official impact report. A stark, side-by-side comparison. The red ink of Gideon's notebook. 140 turnaways. 480 meal deficits. Bled into the clean white of the corporate template. Slide 3. The gas bill. A high-resolution scan of the red unpaid tag, juxtaposed with the 4.5 in the operational efficiencies figure. Slide 4. The money trail. A simplified flowchart. Foundation General Fund. Exec Wing Refresh. Kit Consulting LLC. Slide 5. The invoice. The $150,000 PO for strategic optimization. Slide 6. The shell company. The state registration certificate for Kit Consulting LLC. Registered agent. Mason Kit. Slide 7. The gag order. A screenshot of Cynthia Davies's email to me. Any interaction with media is strictly prohibited. We are monitoring this. Slide 8. The human cost. The audio file of the ex-employee. The photo I'd discreetly taken of his torn Northline polo shirt. The quiet, desperate whisper. My whole department was optimized. It was a public audit, condensed onto a single 32-gigabyte drive. It was irrefutable. It was the truth. Friday, 3:12 p.m. I stood in my apartment, dressed not in my analyst's suit, but in the uniform of the invisible, black pants, a black polo shirt, comfortable soled shoes, the gala's volunteer logistics crew. My phone rang. The screen read, "Unknown." I answered. "You're on the 4:00 p.m. check-in list," Gideon's voice said, no greeting. "Your contact is a woman named Elisa. She'll give you your credentials. The card I gave you is for emergencies, for access. It is not a shield." "I understand," I said. My voice was steady. There was a pause. I could hear the distant sound of a siren on his end, or maybe just the wind whistling through a broken seal. "When you get up there," he said, "you will be on their ground. Glass walls, cameras, security. You may see me. I will be a guest. I will not know you. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Good. Don't call me Grant. Don't call me grandfather. That name has no currency on that floor. It is a liability. Do not rely on the Whitfield name. It will not save you. Rely only on the truth, the data. It's the only thing that's real." "I will," I said. "Then go," he said, "and do your job. Kara." The line clicked dead. I slipped the USB drive into my pocket. I took my smallest digital audio recorder, a slim, black rectangle I'd used for taking notes in meetings, and slid it into the other. I looked in the mirror. I was no one, just a face in the background. It was the perfect cover. I entered Northline Dynamics not through the glittering 70-foot lobby, but through the service entrance in the rear, a steel door that opened onto a concrete loading dock smelling of diesel fumes and kitchen exhaust. The atmosphere was a frantic, controlled chaos. Florists rushed past with towering arrangements of white orchids. Catering staff pushed racks of champagne glasses. I found the volunteer check-in, a folding table in a concrete hallway. Name? A stressed-looking woman, Elisa, asked, not looking up from her clipboard. Kara W., Logistics. She found my name, checked it off, and handed me a lanyard. You're on AV and presentation support. Stick to the back hallways. Don't interact with the guests. You're here to be invisible. Get it? Got it. The badge was simple white plastic. Volunteer. Event Logistics. I clipped it to my shirt. Then, I took the audio recorder from my pocket. It was the same size as a name badge. I used a piece of double-sided tape from my bag and affixed it neatly to the back of my official credentials. The tiny microphone pointed straight out. Anything said to me, or by me, would be captured. I took the service elevator. The ride was slow, rattling. I got off at the 47th floor, but in the kitchens, the air was hot, thick with the smell of roasting beef and garlic. I navigated the maze of steel tables, past chefs yelling in French, and pushed through a set of double doors. I was in the gala hall. It was even more sterile than I remembered. The entire west wall was a 100-foot wide, floor-to-ceiling pane of glass, showcasing a cold, clear panorama of Westover. The sinking sun made the glass ignite, reflecting the city lights back onto the polished marble floor. It was a room of mirrors, a trap of glass. Rows of empty black-tie tables were set with perfect, glittering crystal. At the front of the room, a massive LED screen, 20 feet high, glowed with the Northline Cares logo. A sleek, minimalist lectern stood on the stage in front of it. The room was empty save for a few AV techs in the same black uniform as me, running cables. This was my moment. I walked onto the stage, my soft-soled shoes making no sound. I stood behind the lectern, looking out at the phantom audience. "Just checking levels," I said to a tech nearby, who grunted in response. I tapped the microphone. The live feed icon on the lectern's control panel glowed green. "Test," I said, my voice booming unnaturally in the empty hall. 1, 2, test. I saw the control panel. It was a simple touchscreen. Input 1, main presentation. Input 2, guest lectern. Input 3, backup. I looked to my right. The AV booth was a small, dark-glassed room built into the back wall. I walked off the stage, my heart a cold, steady drum. I walked to the AV booth, pulled the gold-embossed V card from my pocket, and swiped it. The lock clicked green. I slipped inside. It was dark, cool, and smelled of hot electronics and new carpet. Racks of servers hummed. Through the tinted window, I had a perfect, godlike view of the entire room. I found the main console. Input 1 was a hardwired feed from the server rack, running the official presentation. Input 2 was a simple HDMI cable, routed to the lectern for a guest to plug in a laptop. But there was a third machine, a backup laptop on a small shelf, already plugged into a separate channel, a raw feed that could override the others. It was for emergency broadcasts, for a fire, an evacuation message. It had total system priority. I slipped my USB drive from my pocket. I plugged it into the backup laptop. The drive icon appeared on the desktop. I opened my presentation. It filled the screen. It was ready. All it would take was a single mouse click to switch the feed, to send my truth to the 20-foot screen instead of Mason's. I was about to leave when the door to the booth opened. I ducked behind a server rack, my heart leaping into my throat. Mason Kit walked in, and the room was instantly suffocating. He was wearing his gala tuxedo, and his cologne hit me like a physical blow, a sharp, eye-watering scent of bergamot and something metallic. He was followed by Cynthia Davies from HR, and a thin, severe-looking woman in a headset. "And you're sure the B-roll is seamless?" Mason asked, his voice tight with pre-show nerves. "It's perfect, Mason," the woman with the headset said. "We're running the final sequence check now." She sat at the console, not seeing me in the shadows. Mason and Cynthia stood directly behind her, looking out at the hall. "Okay," the PR woman said. You'll be at the part of your speech where you say, the true human impact, right at 7:32 p.m., and that's our cue. We roll the video. On her screen, I could see the presentation timeline. A video file labeled Shelter B-roll was slotted in. Just a note, Mason, Cynthia said. We're cutting that one shot of the Alder House soup kitchen, the one with the residents in line. It tested too drab with the focus group. It's depressing. God, yes, cut it, Mason said, waving a hand. This is a celebration. I don't want people feeling guilty. It's about aspirational impact. We've already replaced it, the PR woman said, clicking. We'll run the Aurora Saves 1,000 Homes motion graphic instead. It's upbeat. It's digital. It matches the project's branding. It's perfect. Mason sighed, a sound of profound satisfaction. Good, good. It's about the numbers. 1,000 homes. That's a real impact. I crouched behind the humming rack, my hand on the mouse of the backup laptop. My recording badge was pointed right at them. It's too drab. Aspirational impact. I looked at my screen, at the scan of the unpaid gas bill, at the audio file of the man with the torn shoes, at the red ink number, 140 turnaways. We'll run the kitchen shot, I whispered to myself, so quietly it was just a breath of air. The one with the broken heater, the one where the kitchen is cold, dark, and closed. They left. I waited a full minute, my blood like ice, then slipped out of the booth. The trap was set. The bomb was armed. All I had to do was wait for Mason to light the fuse. I had 90 minutes. 90 minutes until the 7 p.m. guest arrival. 90 minutes until Mason's 7:30 p.m. keynote. I was in the service corridor behind the main ballroom, a long beige hallway that smelled of industrial floor wax and the hot, savory scent of 1,000 miniature quiches. My black polo shirt was already sticking to my back. The contrast between this hidden world and the cool, glittering ballroom was jarring. I was pretending to check the wiring on a small floor-level junction box, my head down, my volunteer badge prominent. This was my one vulnerability, the time between preparation and execution. I was just a target, waiting. I heard the click-clack of heels on the marble floor just outside the corridor. They stopped. I didn't look up. The rules of being invisible were simple. Don't make eye contact. Look busy. Be forgettable. The sound of the heels started again, this time on the cheap linoleum of the service hall. They were coming toward me. A cloud of perfume arrived first. It wasn't Mason's sharp, modern scent. This was older, heavier, white diamonds and lilies. A funeral scent. A scent I hadn't smelled in years, but one my nervous system recognized instantly. I have to say, Kara, I'm surprised. The voice was smooth, cultured, and coated in a venom so refined it was almost polite. I stopped fiddling with the wires. I looked up. Sloane Whitfield, my stepmother. She was immaculate, poured into a sleeveless, midnight blue sheath dress that probably cost more than my last car. Her blonde hair was pulled into a severe, elegant chignon. Diamonds dripped from her ears and throat. Around her neck, dangling over the dress, was a laminated card. VIP, Foundation Head. She was the head of the Northline Cares Foundation. She was, officially, my grandfather's replacement. She was the one who signed off on every budget cut. Sloane, I said. My voice was flat. I hadn't spoken to her in 3 years. Not since my father's disastrous 60th birthday party, where she'd introduced me to a room of billionaires as Colby's daughter from his first attempt. She smiled, a thin, surgical expression. You're looking healthy. Manual labor seems to agree with you. Your father was so worried when he heard about your breakdown. We were all just heartbroken. Breakdown, I repeated. Is that what Mason told you? I thought it was process violations. The story changes depending on the audience, she said lightly, inspecting her flawless, blood-red fingernails. To the board, you were incompetent. To the family, you were unstable. It's cleaner that way. And you, of all people, know how important it is to keep things clean. She took a step closer. The perfume was suffocating. I didn't think you'd actually do it. The 120 hours. It was a formality. You were supposed to quit. Take the severance and disappear. You were never supposed to be here. I'm just a committed volunteer, I said. Her eyes, a pale, cold blue, hardened. Stop it, Kara. The gala starts in an hour. Mason Kitt is giving the most important speech of his career. My donors are about to pledge millions based on his success. This is my night. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial, menacing whisper. So you will be a good girl. You will take your little badge, stay in the kitchen, and you will be silent. You owe this family silence. I almost laughed. It came out as a short, sharp puff of air. Oh, I owe this family? I looked past her, through the doorway to the glittering ballroom. Which family? Sloane? The one at Ridge Lane? The little blue house your husband, my father, sold to pay for his club membership? The house that got cashed in to buy all this polished glass and Italian marble? Her smile didn't just fade, it inverted. It became a sneer. Oh, you are still so naive, she hissed. You're still that little girl from the wrong side of the tracks. You think this is about a house? You think this is about feelings? She laughed, a sharp, ugly sound, like glass breaking. This, she said, gesturing to the ballroom, is about power, the glass and the marble, the leather chairs in the boardroom. That's not waste, you silly child. That's strategy. Leather chairs help rich people feel comfortable, and comfortable people write bigger checks. The art of this isn't in saving people. It's in making other people feel good about saving people. As she spoke, I saw the files in my head, the ones I had almost missed, buried in a different server. I hadn't just investigated Mason, I'd investigated the foundation. I saw the folder I'd labeled Sloane. It wasn't just incompetence or negligence, it was active theft, parallel to Mason's. I saw the internal memos, signed by her, approving massive transfers from the general fund, the one meant for Alderhouse, to a new sub-account, the Donor Development and Relations Fund. I saw the line items, $85 for a charity partner yacht outing in the Bahamas, $42,000 for a donor appreciation cellar stocking, rare wines and cognacs for the 47th floor donor lounge, $120,000 for gala artist appearance fees. She was running her own grift. She was the gatekeeper. She'd approved Mason's exec wing refresh budget without a single question, because it gave her cover to approve her own. He was stealing from operations. She was stealing from philanthropy. They were two parasites, feeding on the same host, and Alderhouse was what they were excreting. This is all just a business, Kara, she was saying. Your father's business, and you were never, ever cut out for it. She saw the look in my eyes, I think, the dead, analytical calm, the pity, and it enraged her. She was used to my tears, my anger, my teenage resentment. She was not prepared for my audit. She grabbed my arm. Her red nails dug into my sleeve, her grip surprisingly strong. You listen to me, she spat, her mask of civility gone. I took you in. Your father didn't know what to do with you after your mother, after she died. You were a mess. Don't you ever forget who raised you. Don't you forget who put you through college, who got you the interview at Northline in the first place. You owe your entire life to me. I looked down at her hand. The grip was tight, possessive. The deep red nails were like drops of blood on my black sleeve. I don't forget, I said. My voice was quiet, deadly. I don't forget anything. Sloane. I met her gaze. I list it, every meal, every private school tuition payment, every backhanded compliment. I leaned in, close enough to see the tiny cracks in her foundation. I listed all under cost of business, a deduction, the price I had to pay to get here. Her face went white with fury. She had used the wrong leverage. She had tried to threaten me with a debt I had already calculated, audited, and written off. You little... She raised her hand, not to grab, but to strike. Is there a problem here, Ms. Whitfield? A new voice, deep, official. We both froze, Two Northline security guards, in full black suit and earpiece regalia, were standing at the end of the hall. Sloane's hand dropped. Her entire demeanor shifted in a nanosecond. She was instantly the victim, the poised executive, flustered and attacked. "Oh, thank God," she breathed, putting a hand to her diamonds. This volunteer, she was harassing me. So aggressive. I think she might be unstable." The guards looked at me. Their faces were impassive. They started walking toward me. "Ma'am," one said, "I need you to come with us." This was it. The fail-safe. I was going to be dragged out before I could even get to the booth. My hand instinctively went to the V card in my pocket. Grant's card. But what would that prove? That I knew an old man? That I was a Whitfield? Sloane was a Whitfield. It was my word against hers. "Kara?" I flinched. The voice was mine. My name. The PR head, Elisa, the one who had checked me in, was rushing down the hall, clipboard in hand. "Kara, what are you doing? You're not supposed to be here. You're bothering the Foundation head?" Sloane smiled, triumphant. She was, "Yes, please handle this." "I am so sorry, Ms. Whitfield," Elisa gushed. "The gala is in 45 minutes. We're all just on edge. It won't happen again." She turned to me, her face a mask of professional fury. "The AV booth, now. I told you. Invisible. Go." The security guards paused. They looked at Elisa, then at Sloane. Sloane, seeing she had won, that I was being banished exactly where I wanted to go, gave a magnanimous, queenly wave. "Just see that she stays where she belongs. Thank you." She turned, her heels clicking, and walked away. As I turned to go, I saw him. Down the main hallway, past the velvet ropes, walking with a cluster of other elderly, tuxedo-clad guests. Grant, my grandfather. He looked old, frail, even. He was in a simple, slightly outdated tuxedo, playing the part of a long-lost board member perfectly. He was laughing at something another man said. His eyes, our eyes, swept across the service corridor. They passed over Sloane's retreating back, over the security guards, and then, for one fractional second, they landed on me. There was nothing, no flicker of recognition, no sign of support, no anger, no fear. He looked right through me. He was just another guest, looking at a volunteer being scolded. He turned back to his companion and continued walking toward the ballroom. "Do not rely on the Whitfield name. Rely on the truth." I turned. "Sorry," I mumbled to Elisa. "Won't happen again." I walked away from the guards, my heart beating a low, cold, steady rhythm. I pushed open the door to the back stairs, the ones that led to the AV booth. Sloane thought she had won. She thought she had put me in my place. She had just personally escorted the executioner to the switch. The hum was the first thing I noticed. 7:28 p.m. Inside the AV booth, the air was cold, dark, and smelled of hot plastic and static electricity. Below me, the Gala of Mirrors was at full capacity. It wasn't a room of people. It was a sea of black tuxedos and glittering, jewel-toned dresses, 1,000 hard surfaces reflecting the light from the chandeliers. The sound was a low, constant, privileged roar, the sound of 500 people talking and no one listening, punctuated by the high, sharp clink of champagne glasses. I was invisible, a ghost in the machine. My hand was on the mouse of the backup laptop. My presentation, my 32-gigabyte bomb, was open, minimized, waiting. My heart wasn't pounding, not yet. It was a low, cold, steady thud, like a piece of industrial machinery. I was an analyst, checking my data, preparing to execute a query. At 7:29 p.m., the lights in the ballroom dimmed. The roar of conversation died, cut off as if by a switch. A pregnant, expectant hush fell over the room. A single brilliant white spotlight hit the stage. The 20-foot LED screen behind the lectern flared to life. It was a deep, corporate blue and an elegant, serif font. The words appeared. Northline. Cares presents. Aurora. 1,000 meals. It was the graphic Cynthia had focus group tested. It was clean, aspirational, untrue. From the side of the stage, Sloane's voice, disembodied, smooth as velvet over the PA system, filled the room. And now, it is my distinct honor to introduce a true visionary, the man who has redefined our commitment to fiscal responsibility and human impact, the head of Northline Dynamics Strategic Operations, Mr. Mason Kitt. A wave of polite, powerful applause. Mason walked out. He was tan. His teeth were a high-definition white. He was wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than the Alderhouse gas bill for a year. He didn't just walk to the lectern. He strode. His arms spread wide, embracing the applause like a physical thing. He was a corporate messiah, here to absolve them of their sins with tax-deductible donations. He stood at the lectern, basking, letting the applause wash over him. He tapped the microphone. A small, intimate thump echoed through the hall. Thank you, Sloane. What an honor, he smiled. A picture of humble power. But tonight isn't about me. It's not about the board. It's about a simple, powerful idea. An idea that is the beating heart of everything we do at Northline. He paused, leaning in, his face filling the giant screen. It's the idea that every number is a person. That was my cue. My hand, slick with sweat, moved to the emergency override console. Mason was warming up. We saw inefficiencies. We saw line items that had lost their way, and with Project Aurora, we streamlined, we optimized, we turned data back into destiny. We ensured that every single dollar of your generous donations went exactly where it was meant to go. He looked at the front row, at Sloane. Let me show you the true human impact. On the main console, I saw the PR woman, Elisa, click play on the video file. Aurora saves 1,000 homes final, MP4. My hand, steady now, slammed down on the master override button. A red light on the console switched to green. I switched the primary feed from input 1 to input 3. From Mason's lie to my truth. Click. On the 20-foot screen, the 1,000 homes motion graphic stuttered, tore, and vanished. It was replaced by silence and darkness. Not total darkness, a low resolution, time-stamped video from a maintenance camera. The Alderhouse kitchen, 3:14 a.m. The steel counters were gleaming, but dark. The industrial ovens were cold. The only light came from a single, buzzing, fluorescent tube that cast a sickly green pall over everything. The soaring, upbeat corporate music that was supposed to be playing was gone. The only sound, now amplified by the $1 million sound system, was the hollow clank, clank, clank of the broken heater in the basement trying, and failing, to ignite. A ripple of confusion went through the crowd. A murmur. What is this? Mason hadn't turned around yet. He was still smiling. 1,000 homes, saved from risk. The video switched. A new camera. The dormitory. 4:22 a.m. It was a high-angle shot, grainy and cold. It showed a row of cots. It showed a young mother, whom I recognized, sitting up. She was looking at her 2 small children, huddled under a single, thin blanket. She was looking at them, and then she quietly took off her own thin coat, the one she'd been wearing, and spread it over them. She sat there, in the dark, rubbing her arms for warmth. The murmur in the ballroom stopped. It was replaced by a single, collective, audible gasp. The clink of glasses ceased. Mason heard it. His smile faltered. He turned. He looked at the 20-foot-high image of the freezing dormitory. What? He whispered. I wasn't done. I stopped the video feed. Click. I brought up slide 2 of my presentation. A stark, black and white table. Northline branding. 2 columns. Column A. Official impact report. Submitted to board. Beds filled. 525 meals. Served. 2 through 100. Column B. Alderhouse nightly logbook. actual. Guests turned away, cold full, 140 meal deficits, request denied, 480. The whispers were loud now. Is this part of the presentation? What does turnaways mean? Mason was at the lectern, his face pale, slick with a sudden, panicked sweat under the hot lights. He looked frantically toward the AV booth. He couldn't see me through the tinted glass. There's a technical. He fumbled with his note cards. A technical glitch, a systems error, if you'll just bear with us. Click, slide 3. A high-resolution scan of the red service discontinued tag from the gas company, blown up. It looked like a threat. Beside it, the 4.5 MEMS operational efficiencies figure from Mason's own Aurora dashboard. The room was no longer confused. It was angry. Click, slide 4. The money trail, the simple, brutal flowchart. Northline Cares General Fund. Project ND Exec Wing Refresh. Kit Consulting LLC. Click, slide 5, the invoice, $150,000. Strategic Optimization Services. Click, slide 6, the shell company registration. Registered agent, Mason Kit. A roar. People were standing. I saw a man in the front row. Someone I recognized from the Wall Street Journal. Point at the screen, and then at Mason. I saw Sloane. She was gripping the edge of the table, her knuckles white. She was staring at Mason with a look of pure, murderous betrayal. She hadn't known. He'd run his own grift, separate from hers. This is a lie, Mason shouted into the mic, his voice cracking, pitching high. This is a fabrication. It's a cyber attack. Security, shut it down now. The PR woman, Elisa, was in the booth, pounding on the main console, but I had the emergency lock. She couldn't do anything. I let the image of Mason's name hang there for a moment. Then I unmuted the audio feed from my recorder. I hit play, the first file, the one from this very booth. Cynthia Davies' voice. Cutting that one shot of the Alder House soup kitchen, it tested too drab. It's depressing. Mason Kit's voice. God. Yes, cut it. This is a celebration. I don't want people feeling guilty. It's about aspirational impact. The room was dead silent. Frozen. They were listening to the real Mason, not the one on stage. I switched to the second file, the one from the hallway. Sloane's voice. Leather chairs help rich people feel comfortable, and comfortable people write bigger checks. I saw her recoil, as if struck. I played the final clip, the one from her deleted voicemails. The ace in my pocket. Sloane's voice, crystal clear, echoing through the hall of mirrors. Just push the payment through. The new chairs for the donor lounge need to be here before Christmas. The shelter can be cold for a bit. They'll manage. A woman in the front row screamed, a short, sharp, horrified sound. The room exploded. Mason was backing away from the lectern, holding his hands up. Sloane was frozen, a statue of white-hot terror. Security guards were running toward the stage, their earpieces squawking, but they didn't know who to grab. They were all looking at the stage, at Mason, at the screen. They weren't looking at the AV booth. My job in the shadows was done. I clicked the eject button for my USB drive. I pulled the small, hot piece of plastic and metal from the laptop. I pocketed it. I unclipped my volunteer badge and let it fall to the floor. I opened the door of the AV booth. The wall of sound, shouting, accusations, panic, hit me. I didn't go back to the service corridor. I didn't run. I walked straight out into the ballroom. I walked past the tables of stunned billionaires, their $500 a plate dinners forgotten. I walked down the central aisle, toward the stage. Mason saw me, his eyes, wide with panic, locked onto mine. He recognized me, the unstable analyst, the drab volunteer. You! He screamed, his voice a raw shriek. He pointed, his hand shaking. Stop her! It's her! She did this! Security, stop her! The security guards turned. They saw me, a woman in a black polo shirt, walking calmly, not away from the chaos, but into it. I didn't stop. I put my foot on the stairs to the stage. I walked up. One step at a time, I walked past the sputtering, terrified Mason Kit. I walked right up to the live, hot microphone he had just abandoned. The entire room, seeing a new focal point, went utterly, deathly silent. I looked out at the sea of faces, at the wall of glass reflecting the city lights. I looked at the camera, and I took a breath. I gripped the microphone, pulling it from the lectern's clip. The soft pop echoed in the sudden, vast silence. The heat of the spotlight was intense, a single point of focus in the glass-walled room. My heart was a cold, steady drum. This was not a performance. It was a data presentation. "My name is Kara Whitfield," I said. My voice, amplified, filled the hall. It was clear, cold, and did not tremble. "My employee ID is 904T12. I am a senior risk analyst for Northline Dynamics." I looked out at the sea of frozen faces. I saw Mason, his face a mask of purple, strangled rage, and the two security guards who had just reached the stage, their hands out, unsure whether to grab me or their earpieces. "I am the analyst who was placed on mandatory leave 3 weeks ago for data integrity violations. I am the process violator, Mr. Kit and Ms. Davies framed when I refused to falsify the data for Project Aurora." I turned back to the lectern, pushing Mason's useless, scattered note cards onto the floor. I still had control of the presentation. "This is not a technical glitch," I continued, my voice sharp, declarative. "This is an audit, a public audit, and it is not finished." I looked at Mason, who was sputtering. This is slander, libel. It's data," I cut him off. "Let's return to it." Click. I brought slide 2 back onto the 20-foot screen. The brutal, side-by-side comparison. On the left, you see the official key performance indicators for Project Aurora, submitted by Mr. Kit and approved by Ms. Sloan Whitfield. It claims 100% bed capacity. It claims 0 meal deficits. It is the entire basis for the $4.5 million inefficiencies Mr. Kit just celebrated. I pointed to the other column, the one in red ink. On the right, you see the actual, verifiable nightly logs from the Alder House shelter, a shelter this foundation is supposed to be funding. 140 turnaways last week alone. That is 140 people sent back into the freezing cold, because the shelter Mr. Kit optimized was full. 480 meal deficits. That is 480 people who went to bed hungry. A wave of low, angry murmurs swept the room. The guests were no longer confused. They were jurors. "Mr. Kit told you this was about fiscal responsibility," I said, my voice cutting through the noise. "He is correct. It was about his fiscal responsibility." Click. I advanced to slide 6. The shell company registration. "Kit Consulting LLC, I pointed, not at the screen, but directly at Mason, who was now being held by the elbow by a security guard. "This is Kit Consulting LLC, a shell company, registered by Mason Kit 6 months ago, at a P.O. box address in a strip mall." Click. Slide 5. The invoice. "This is an invoice for $150,000, paid from the Exec Wing Refresh Fund, a fund filled entirely by the savings from Project Aurora. The vendor is Kit Consulting LLC. The service is strategic optimization. Mr. Kit didn't save $4.5 million of the foundation money. He stole it. He paid himself $150,000 to, among other things, purchase the new Italian leather chairs for the 47th floor." The room erupted. This was not abstract. This was not a rounding error. This was felony theft. "But he was not the only one," I said, my voice dropping. The room quieted, eager for the next cut. I turned my gaze to the front table, to Sloan. She was staring at me, her face white, her eyes vibrating with a hatred so pure it was almost impressive. "Mr. Kit could not have done this without an accomplice. He needed approval to divert the funds. He needed a gatekeeper. Click, a new slide, one I had saved, a high-resolution scan of a digital approval form. This is the digital signature of Sloan Whitfield, head of the foundation, approving the exec wing refresh budget. She signed off on it. Click, the donor development ledger. And why? Because while Mason was looting the operations budget, Ms. Whitfield was looting the general fund. This is her donor development ledger. $85,000 for a charity partner yacht outing, $42,000 for donor seller stocking. This is the aspirational impact she and Mr. Kit were celebrating. I looked directly at Sloan. This wasn't a foundation. It was a pair of competing personal bank accounts. Shut her up! It was Elisa, the PR head. She had finally snapped. She and the second security guard were rushing the stage. Get her off! Get that microphone! Kill the feed! The guard was big. He lunged, not at me, but at the lectern, his hand swiping for the microphone. I gripped it, pulling it close. This is the data, I shouted, as his other hand closed on my arm. These are the facts. He was strong. He was pulling me, pulling my arm back, trying to wrestle the mic from my hand. It was over. He was going to drag me off stage. Stop. The voice was not mine. It was not amplified, but it was so powerful it seemed to hit the back wall of the room and bounce back. A single, cold, absolute word. The guard pulling my arm froze. His hand was still on me, but he went utterly still. The entire room, the shouting, the panic, the people moving to the exits, all of it stopped. I said, the voice repeated, and this time it was louder. Let her speak. Every head in the room turned. As one, in the center aisle, about 10 rows back, a man was standing. It was Grant, my grandfather. He was no longer the shuffling, elderly guest. He was standing at his full height, his posture radiating an authority that had been dormant, not dead. He had taken a microphone from a stunned AV technician on the floor, the spotlight. Unsure of its target, wavered, then moved, leaving me in shadow and illuminating him. He was Grant Whitfield, the founder, the myth, the ghost. A gasp, separate from the earlier ones, went through the room, a gasp of recognition. Grant? A man at the front table whispered, his face pale. My God, it is... I saw Sloane's face. The hatred was gone, replaced by a deep, hollow, primal terror. This was the one thing she had never planned for, the one variable she thought was dead. Grant, she whispered, her hands flat on the table, as if to push herself away. Mr. Whitfield, the security guard holding me said, his voice a dry croak. He let go of my arm as if it were on fire. He stepped back. Grant took one step into the aisle. He did not look at me. He did not look at Mason. He addressed the room. My apologies for the interruption and for my 10-year absence. His voice was the gravelly rumble of Mr. Alder, but now it was underpinned with steel, the voice of a man who builds and destroys. Many of you thought I had retired. I had not. I was in the field, conducting a long-term audit of my own. He looked around the room, his eyes scanning the faces of his board members, his donors. At Northline, we believe in transparency. Ms. Whitfield here, he motioned to me, a simple, respectful gesture, has just provided it. She has done her job. Now, we will do ours. He looked at the stunned board members at the front tables. This is not a gala. This is not a party. His voice dropped, and it was a judgment. This is an emergency meeting of the Board of Directors of Northline Dynamics and the Northline Cares Foundation. As the majority shareholder and chairman of the board, I am calling this meeting to order, effective immediately. The silence was absolute. It was the silence of a courtroom. Grant looked at the head of security, who was standing by the main doors. Captain, secure the exits. No one leaves this room. The captain, who had been an employee for 20 years, just nodded. Yes, Mr. Whitfield. Grant's gaze then moved to the stage, to the two guards, who were standing uselessly between me and Mason. "Officers," Grant commanded, "please relieve Mr. Kit of his corporate identification, his keys, and his personal electronics. He is on administrative leave, effective immediately, pending a full criminal investigation." Mason, who had been silent, finally broke. "You can't. You're not. This is slander. I will sue. I will—" "You will do nothing, Mason," Grant's voice cut him off, cold as ice. "Except speak to your lawyer." The guards, now with clear, indisputable orders, moved with purpose. One took Mason firmly by the arm, the other unclipped the ID badge from his tuxedo and began patting him down for his phone. Mason's protest dissolved into a choked sob. Grant's gaze, relentless, moved to the front table. "The same for Ms. Sloane Whitfield. Please escort her to the legal office on the 46th floor. Her access is revoked." Sloane didn't fight. She didn't scream or cry. She simply deflated. The power that animated her had been cut. She stood up, her diamond necklace looking like a collar. A female guard gently took her elbow and led her out of the ballroom. She did not look at me. She did not look at Grant. She just looked at the exit. It was done. The execution was complete. I was still on stage, still holding the microphone, but the power was no longer in my hand. It was in the aisle. A man in a sharp pinstripe suit, Daniel Cho, the company's general counsel, was walking briskly toward the stage. He looked like he had just aged a decade, but his professional mask was firmly in place. "Mr. Chairman," Cho said, his voice tight, "we will require a full independent, a forensic accounting team, by morning." "You will," Grant said, "and you will cooperate fully with the district attorney's office. Is that understood?" "Yes, Mr. Chairman." Cho looked up at the stage. He looked at me. I was the source of this apocalypse. I walked to the edge of the stage, above him. He was looking up. I was looking down. I reached into the pocket of my black trousers and pulled out the USB drive. The small, simple piece of plastic and metal, the bomb. I held it out, letting it dangle from my fingers. "This is the full data set, Mr. Cho," I said. My voice was quiet, my own again, no longer needing the microphone's power. "All invoices, transaction logs, server data, and the original, uncompressed audio. You'll find it. Comprehensive." He looked at the small drive as if it were radioactive. He knew exactly what it was. The leverage, the proof. He slowly, deliberately, reached up and took it from my fingers. I looked at my own hand, the one that had held the drive, the one that had been shaking for 3 weeks. It was perfectly, completely still. The adrenaline of the night before had evaporated, leaving behind a hollow, buzzing clarity. I was awake at 5 a.m., my body thrumming with an exhaustion so deep it felt like a separate consciousness. My apartment, which had once been my fortress, now felt like a temporary holding cell. At 6:01 a.m., my phone chimed. It was the first of the official tremors. An all-staff, all-company email from the Office of the General Counsel. Subject: urgent, all-staff memorandum on leadership changes. The language was cold, precise, and utterly brutal in its finality. It was a document written by lawyers to cauterize a wound. Following an emergency session of the Board of Directors, convened by Chairman Grant Whitfield on the evening of October 25th, Northline Dynamics has initiated a comprehensive internal investigation. Effective immediately, Mr. Mason Kit and Ms. Sloane Whitfield have been suspended from all duties and their access to all Northline systems and properties has been revoked. The company is cooperating fully with state and federal law enforcement regarding a criminal investigation into the misappropriation of foundation and corporate funds. All assets related to the entity, Kit Consulting LLC, have been frozen by court order. The board has appointed an independent third-party forensic accounting firm to conduct a full audit of the Northline Cares Foundation and all related subaccounts. It went on. Page after page of legalese, of interim leadership, and renewed commitment to transparency. It was a public execution, rendered in 10-point, sans serif font. I read the words criminal investigation and felt nothing, no joy, no triumph. It was just a variable being corrected. It was the logical, unavoidable outcome of the data I had presented. It was justice completed in black and white ink. I didn't go back to my apartment. I took the bus, the same bus I had taken for 3 weeks, to Alder House. I felt the change before I saw it. I pushed through the heavy front doors, and the air that hit me was not the damp, stagnant, 40-degree chill I had grown accustomed to. The air was dry, and it was warm. I stood in the entryway and just listened. Under the sounds of the morning, the quiet conversation, the rattle of a cart, was a new sound, a low, powerful, mechanical hum. I walked past the front desk, down the hall, and through the door to the basement. I followed the hum. The boiler room door was propped open. The red "Service Discontinued" tag was gone, pulled from the main valve. The boiler itself, a massive dark green metal beast, was alive. A small blue pilot light flickered steadily, and the whole machine vibrated with a deep, resonant thrum. I placed my hand on the large copper pipe leading out of it. It was hot. So hot I had to pull my hand back. The heat was on. I went back upstairs, to the kitchen. The smell was wrong. It wasn't the thin, watery scent of boiled potatoes. It was the rich, sharp, savory smell of frying bacon, and eggs, and coffee, real coffee. The kitchen manager, the woman who had whispered about the budget cuts, was at the industrial stove, scrambling a mountain of eggs in a pan. She looked up, saw me, and her face crumpled. She didn't cry, but her eyes were wet. She just pointed at the walk-in refrigerator. "It came at 4:17 a.m., she said, her voice thick. "The emergency transfer, the real one, full budget restoration, retroactive to the start of the fiscal year, and back pay, for all of us." I nodded, my own throat tightening. The numbers on my USB drive, the abstract data points I had stolen from the server, had become this. They had become heat. They had become calories. They had become a paycheck. I walked to the small office behind the front desk, Mr. Alder's desk. I sat in the old, creaking chair. It felt different. I turned on the ancient computer. While it was booting, my phone buzzed again. A new email. This one was just to me. From HR Compliance, Northline Dynamics. Subject: follow-up regarding your sabbatical. Dear Kara, following an internal review of the circumstances surrounding your recent mandatory leave, we have determined that a process misunderstanding occurred at the managerial level. Your diligence in attempting to flag data discrepancies has been noted. We deeply regret the error in process. As such, your suspension is rescinded, effective immediately. Your full back pay will be processed in the next 24 hours. We are pleased to welcome you back to Northline Dynamics, and your keycard access has been reinstated. We look forward to your continued contributions. Sincerely, Northline Human Resources. A process misunderstanding. I stared at the words. It was the most cowardly, perfectly corporate non-apology I had ever read. It was the system, clicking back into place, pretending it had never been broken. It was the final, pathetic lie. I took a slow breath. I hit forward. My fingers typed in a single email address. The group list for the Alder House staff, the kitchen manager, the night attendants, the caseworkers. I didn't add a subject. I didn't add a single word of commentary. I just hit send. That's a cold move. I jumped. Grant was standing in the doorway. He wasn't Mr. Alder. He wasn't the tuxedo-clad chairman. He was somewhere in between, wearing a simple pair of dark trousers and a gray wool sweater. He looked like a retired professor. He was holding a thin, plain manila envelope. "They deserve to see it," I said. "The lie." He nodded, walking in and closing the door. The sound of the warm heater was a soft, steady presence in the small room. "Cynthia Davies cleared out her desk an hour ago," he said, not as gossip, but as a final data point. Good, I said. He sat in the chair opposite the desk, the cheap visitor's chair. He slid the manila envelope across the battered desk. You're probably getting a lot of emails this morning, he said. This is one more. I didn't open it. I looked at him, the man who had been a ghost, the man who was my family. I have to ask, I said, my voice quiet. The memory I have, the wind farm, the apple pie, was that real? The question hung in the warm air. Are you him? Are you Grandpa Grant? He met my gaze. His blue-gray eyes were clear. I am, he said, his voice soft. It was real, a long time ago. Your mother used to bring you out every summer, before Colby shut me out. A small, sad smile touched his lips. And last night, at the gala, I was the chairman, but for the last 5 years, in this room, I was just Mr. Alder, the man who counts the blankets. It was the only title that still felt true. I looked down at the envelope, then back at him. The room was silent, save for the hum of the heater. He wasn't going to hug me. He wasn't going to try and bridge the 20-year gap of silence and pain with some empty, sentimental gesture. I was relieved. A hug would have been a lie. We weren't that. We were two people who understood what a ledger meant. Open it, he said. I pulled out the single sheet of paper. It was heavy. Expensive bond. The letterhead was new. The Northline Cares Foundation. Office of the Chairman. It was a letter. An offer of employment. Position. Director. Foundation Data and Integrity. It was a new role. A position that had not existed 24 hours ago. It reported directly to the chairman. The salary made my hands shake. Why? I whispered. Why this? Because you're the only analyst I've ever met who understands that the numbers are people, he said. You're the only one who bothered to check the denominator. I need someone inside the glass tower who still knows what cold feels like. He leaned forward, and he didn't put his hand on my shoulder. He put his hand on the old, black and red ledger book that still sat on the desk. The book of turnaways and meal deficits. I told you I would open the door for you, he said, his voice rough. I was wrong. I didn't do anything. I just sat here in the dark and watched my company rot. He looked at me, his gaze fierce. You opened the door yourself. You found the flaw. You built the key, and you kicked the whole rotten frame down. I'm not giving you a job. Kara, I'm giving you a master key to the whole system. Now go in there, and don't ever let them lie again. I left the office, the letter in my hand. The main room of the shelter was brighter, warmer. The atmosphere, which had always been one of hushed, desperate waiting, was almost cheerful. Residents were talking at the tables, sipping real coffee. I saw the young mother I'd seen on my first night, the one whose son had hidden the bread. He was sitting on the floor, his back to me. He was focused, intensely, on his feet. He wasn't putting on old, torn sneakers. He was lacing up a brand new pair of sturdy, brown, high-top boots, a donation from a local store, part of the new flood of support that had come in overnight. He fumbled with the laces, then stood, stamping his feet, feeling the solid, new soles on the floor. He looked up and saw me. He recognized me, the lady who mopped the floors. He tilted his head, a simple, childish, direct question. Do you work in the big glass building? I stopped. The question hit me. Am I one of them? Am I the corporate employee who lives in the sky, or the volunteer who walks on the cold floor? I looked at him, at his new, warm boots. I looked past him, out the window. I couldn't see the Northline Tower from here. I just saw the low, solid, brick roof of the shelter. A roof that was, for the first time in a long time, warm. A roof that was doing its job. I crouched down, so I was at his level. Yes, I said. I work in the glass building. I smiled. But I'm the one they hired to make sure the numbers don't lie. The 25th of October, 1 year, to the day, since the Gala of Mirrors. The Northline Cares Gala did not happen this year. The society pages of the Westover Gazette had noted its absence a week prior. speculating on the company's new, quiet recalibration of its philanthropic efforts. The glass-walled ballroom on the 47th floor was dark tonight. No spotlights crisscrossed the downtown sky. No valets were parking Bentleys. No one was sipping champagne and feeling good about aspirational impact. The event, such as it was here, at Alder House. We called it Lights On. It wasn't a fundraiser. It wasn't a gala. It was an anniversary, a one-year marker for the day the heat came back. There were no donors. There were no board members in tuxedos. There were, explicitly, no cameras. The press release, which I had written myself, was one sentence. The Alder House shelter will be hosting a private dinner for its staff and residents. The main hall, the one I had first entered with a mop and a belly full of bleach-scented humiliation, was unrecognizable. It was packed. The air didn't smell of mildew and industrial soup. It smelled of roasted chicken, of rosemary and garlic, of fresh bread. The kitchen staff, their salaries now benchmarked at 15% above the industry average, had been planning this menu for a month. The sound wasn't the polite, brittle clink of crystal. It was the loud, chaotic, joyous clatter of real ceramic plates and silverware. It was the sound of children laughing, not whispering, but laughing, loud and sharp. A local high school string quartet, who had volunteered for free, was playing in the corner, but their Vivaldi was mostly drowned out by the sheer, wonderful noise of 150 people eating a warm meal in a safe place. I stood in the corner, near the new, insulated windows. My job for the last 365 days had not been one of celebration. It had been a war, a grinding, brutal, bureaucratic war. As the director of Foundation Data and Integrity, I had become the most feared person at Northline Dynamics. My job was to sit in the glass-walled boardrooms, the ghost of the gala, and to be the single, immovable no. My job was to look at a polished presentation from a new department head and say, "Your numbers are aspirational. Show me the raw data." My job was to say, "This executive retreat budget will be cut by 80%. That money is being reallocated to fund the new plumbing for the downtown women's shelter. We are not voting on it." My job was to audit the auditors. My father, Colby, had stepped down as CEO 2 months after the gala. Citing personal health reasons, we had not spoken. The restructuring had been a polite, bloodless word for the purge that followed. Mason and Sloane's criminal trials were set for the spring. The evidence was, as I'd promised, comprehensive. My phone, my work phone, buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. A text from the new interim CEO, a nervous man from the legal department. "Kara, just checking in. Hope the anniversary dinner is going well. The board is very supportive of the new metrics." A year ago, a text like that would have been a threat from Cynthia Davies. Now, it was a message of fealty, of fear. They were terrified of me. I typed back a single word, acknowledged. Then, I powered the phone off, completely. The screen went black. I slipped it into my pocket, the glass tower, for tonight, could manage its own affairs. The kitchen manager caught my eye and nodded. It was time. I moved away from the party, past the front desk. The old, battered metal desk was still there, but the ancient, green-screened computer was gone. In its place was a slim, new terminal, networked directly to my office, monitoring the real-time capacity, food stores, and maintenance needs of all 5 shelters in the new Northline Cares network. I went to the main utility closet. The door, once rusted, was new. The hinges were silent. I opened the breaker panel. It wasn't a tangle of old, frayed wires. It was a clean, meticulously labeled, brand-new system. I found the breaker switch labeled Courtyard. The alley, the dark, dumpster-filled, rain-slicked patch of concrete where I had first seen Grant's SUV, where I had realized the world was broken. It wasn't an alley anymore. We had spent 6 months, and a significant chunk of Sloane's old donor development fund, to tear it out. It was now a brick-paved courtyard, lined with waterproof benches and young, hardy trees. I put my hand on the switch. I thought, for a second, of the 20-foot screen in the gala of mirrors, of the override switch in the AV booth. This was a different kind of switch. I flipped it up. There was a heavy, satisfying thunk as the circuit closed. I walked to the heavy back door, the one I had pushed open in a panic. I opened it. The cold night air hit my face, smelling of damp pavement and the distant city. Above me, the single, harsh yellow floodlight was gone. In its place, a long, delicate-looking thread of heavy-duty string lights, the kind with warm, oversized Edison bulbs, crisscrossed the courtyard. They flickered once, twice, then, all at once, they flared to life, illuminating the entire space in a soft, steady, golden light. A cheer went up from the hall as residents, holding their plates, began to spill out into the newly lit space, eager for the fresh air. I stood by the door, just watching, a figure separated from the shadows near the new iron gate. Grant. He wasn't in his tuxedo. He wasn't the chairman. He was wearing the same faded flannel shirt and worn corduroys he'd worn on my first night. He was just Mr. Alder. He saw me. He looked up at the new lights, then at the residents laughing as they found spots on the benches. He looked at the steam rising from their plates of hot food. He caught my eye from across the courtyard. He didn't smile. He just, slowly, almost imperceptibly, nodded. It was a transfer of the watch, a silent acknowledgement that the house was in order. He turned, pulled the collar of his flannel shirt tighter, and walked out the gate, disappearing into the light November rain. He was going back to his own quiet life, leaving the glass tower and the foundation to me. He was, once again, just Mr. Alder. I stayed by the door for a long time. When I came back inside, the warmth of the hall wrapped around me. I walked to the front desk. I heard it, a sound I hadn't heard in all my time in this building. A soft tick, tick, tick. It was the sound of the new heater, of hot water expanding the copper pipes, of a system working exactly as it was designed to, a sound of profound, quiet, mechanical comfort. A sharp gust of wind rattled the new, double-paned front windows. The glass held. The cold retreated. I reached under the desk. I had been saving something. The old, cheap, plastic-framed sign, the one I had seen on my first night. I had kept it in my new, sterile office on the 47th floor. A reminder. Tonight, I was bringing it home. I walked to the wall, right above the new, glowing data terminal, and I hung the sign. Every number is a person. This time, it was not a lie. It was the law. I went into the small manager's office, the new manager, a wonderful woman named Maria. Let me have it for the evening. On the desk sat my own ledger. Not Gideon's black and red book of deficits. This was a clean, black formal audit book. It was titled Foundation Integrity, Year 1. It was filled with new policies, cross-checked balances, and confirmed expenditures. I opened it to the last page. It was blank. I picked up a pen. I wrote today's date. Underneath, I wrote 2 words, lights on. I closed the book, a soft thud in the warm, quiet office. Case closed. Outside, I could hear the string quartet, finally audible, playing something soft and sweet. I could hear the laughter from the courtyard. I could hear the steady ticking hum of the heater. No more speeches were needed. The lights were on. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We'd love to connect with you. Please comment below and let us know where you're listening from, and share your thoughts on Kara's journey. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video. And if you want to support us further, please hit that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.